Rain drums against Officer James Morrison's cruiser as lightning illuminates the empty streets of Cedar Grove, where he notices a sleek black Mercedes slicing through the storm with unusual precision. His dashcam clock reads 11:27 p.m., and something about the way the vehicle navigates each turn with military precision triggers 15 years of cop instincts, setting his pulse racing. The windshield wipers flash across his view, creating a rhythmic pattern that matches his growing suspicion as he follows the Mercedes from a distance, noting how the driver maintains exactly the speed limit even through areas where most locals tend to accelerate. Officer Morrison adjusts his body camera, making sure its recording light blinks steadily in the darkness of his patrol car. His thoughts drift to the commendation he received last month for outstanding service, though the whispers around the precinct about his methods never quite died down. The rain intensifies, creating sheets of water across his windshield, yet the Mercedes ahead maintains its perfect trajectory, never wavering even as thunder crashes overhead, illuminating the refined silhouette of its driver. Cedar Grove, a normally quiet suburb of well-maintained lawns and comfortable homes, seems different tonight, shadows, deeper mysteries lurking behind drawn curtains as neighbors peer out at the unfolding scene. Morrison notices the Mercedes signal blinks precisely 3 seconds before each turn, following the driver's manual to the letter, almost as if someone wants to avoid any possible reason for attention, which to his experienced eye draws even more scrutiny to the vehicle ahead. His computer terminal glows with the license plate check, revealing the car is registered to a T2 Enterprises, triggering another red flag in Morrison's mind. As shell companies often use such generic names, the rain hammers harder against his roof, the sound mixing with the low rumble of his engine as he maintains his distance, carefully observing every move the driver makes ahead of him, watching for any sign of suspicious behavior that might justify his growing unease. Lightning flashes again, revealing glimpses of expensive shops and boutiques, their windows dark at this late hour, reflecting the sleek black car. As it passes, Morrison recalls a recent briefing about a series of high-end burglaries in neighboring counties, though something about this situation feels different, more calculated, more purposeful than a simple smash and grab operation. His thumb hovers over the light bar switch, while his mind races through procedural protocols and potential scenarios. The Mercedes driver takes another perfect turn, this time onto Maple Avenue, where the city's oldest bank stands dark and imposing against the stormy sky. Morrison notices how the vehicle's headlights seem to linger just a fraction too long on the building's security cameras, almost as if scanning them. His years of experience screaming that this level of precision, this attention to detail masks something bigger than a simple late-night drive through an affluent neighborhood. Steam rises from the warm hood of his cruiser as he idles at the intersection, watching the Mercedes maintain its methodical pace past the rows of high-end stores. His radio crackles with routine chatter from dispatch, but he remains focused on the vehicle ahead, studying its every movement, while rain continues to pour around them, creating an isolating curtain of water that seems to separate this moment from the normal flow of time. Officer Morrison adjusts his seat, leaning forward slightly as his training kicks in, evaluating multiple approaches for the stop he plans to initiate, his mind already reversing the standard questions and procedures, while his instincts tell him this stop might be anything but standard. The air in his cruiser grows thick with tension as he finally reaches for the light bar switch, knowing that whatever happens next will shatter the quiet of this rain-soaked night in Cedar Grove. Red and blue lights shatter the darkness as Morrison approaches the Mercedes, his boots splashing through puddles, while his hand hovers near his weapon. The woman inside sits statue still, her designer suit visible through rain-streaked windows, yet instead of fear her eyes meet his in the rearview mirror with an unsettling calm that makes his finger twitch. The intersection of Cedar Grove and Maple Avenue becomes an arena of swirling emergency lights, reflecting off the wet pavement, creating an almost supernatural atmosphere around both vehicles. Morrison takes measured steps toward the Mercedes, his training kicking in as he notices the car's perfectly maintained exterior, not a scratch or smudge despite the torrential rain. The back window shows a dry cleaning receipt, and what appears to be a federal courthouse parking permit, though the details remain frustratingly unclear through the rain-spattered glass. His boots create rhythmic splashes against the ground, each step bringing him closer to what his instincts scream is not a routine traffic stop. The rain intensity increases, creating a curtain of water between him and the Mercedes, yet the woman inside remains perfectly positioned, hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, her posture suggesting years of law enforcement or military training. Morrison notices her suit appears to be tailored and expensive, her jewelry minimal but elegant, suggesting a level of sophistication that seems at odds with his initial suspicions about the vehicle. Steam rises from the Mercedes hood, mixing with the rain to create an ethereal fog that swirls around Morrison as he approaches. The subtle scent of expensive leather and a hint of jasmine perfume drift through the barely cracked window. The woman maintains her position, her dark eyes following his movement with a predatory focus that makes the hair on the back of his neck stand up despite the warmth of his rain-soaked uniform. Officer Morrison taps his body camera twice, ensuring it's recording, as he positions himself slightly behind the driver's window, his stance widening to maintain balance on the slick pavement. The woman's profile remains calm, almost amused as she watches him in her side mirror, her manicured fingers drumming once against the steering wheel in what seems like impatience rather than nervousness, the gesture so subtle yet somehow commanding. Lightning flashes overhead, illuminating the scene in stark white, revealing more details about the vehicle's interior. A sleek laptop secured in a custom mount, a sophisticated communication system barely visible beneath the dashboard, and what appears to be a tactical bag in the back seat. All observations that send warning signals through Morrison's trained mind, yet contradict his usual expectations for a late-night traffic stop. The woman's breathing remains steady, visible in the slight fog her breath creates on the window, while Morrison's own heart rate increases with each passing second. His police radio crackles with distant chatter, creating an unsettling background noise to this silent standoff between officer and driver. The air grows thick with tension as neither party makes the expected moves in this deadly dance of authority. Rain continues to pour down Morrison's back as he finally steps into full view of the driver's window, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness to illuminate the interior, while his other hand remains ready near his weapon. The woman turns her head slowly, deliberately, her expression carrying a confidence that seems to radiate authority. Despite her position as the one being stopped, her eyes lock onto his with an intensity that suggests this encounter is about to take an unexpected turn. A sudden gust of wind whips through the scene, sending waves of water across the pavement as Morrison prepares to speak his standard introduction, catching in his throat as he notices something unusual about the way the woman reaches for what he assumes will be her license and registration, her movements too practiced, too precise for a civilian. Special Agent Tamara Wilson allows a slight smile to cross her face as she reveals her FBI credentials, watching Officer Morrison's expression morph from authority to uncertainty in the glow of her badge, her phone silently recording every micro-expression, every hesitation, and every word as part of a 6-month operation investigating police conduct in Cedar County, her movements deliberate and measured as she holds the golden badge where the rain and emergency lights make it gleam with undeniable federal authority. The sophisticated recording equipment hidden throughout her vehicle captures Morrison's sharp intake of breath as he processes the reality before him. Special Agent Wilson maintains her practiced calm developed through years of undercover operations while she watches his right hand drift away from his weapon holster in the reflection of her side mirror. The rain continues its steady drumbeat against the Mercedes roof, creating a soundtrack to this moment of revelation. Agent Wilson activates a series of hidden cameras with a subtle gesture, each lens focusing on Officer Morrison from different angles, documenting his behavioral shift as he realizes the gravity of his situation. The federal courthouse parking permit he noticed earlier now carries a weight of truth that seems to press down on his shoulders like the heavy rain soaking through his uniform, her eyes never leaving his face as she observes years of unchecked authority crumbling in real time. Thunder rolls overhead as Agent Wilson reaches for her FBI-issued phone, the screen illuminating her features with a blue glow that highlights her professional demeanor, the device automatically uploading every second of this encounter to secure federal servers, while Morrison stands frozen in the storm, his flashlight beam wavering slightly as it reveals the interior of what he now realizes is a fully equipped federal surveillance vehicle. The persistent rain transforms into a light drizzle as if nature itself pauses to witness this shift in power. Agent Wilson allows the silence to stretch, maintaining her position of control as she watches Morrison struggle with this unprecedented situation. Her years of experience in the Bureau's Civil Rights Division having taught her the value of these uncomfortable moments, the weight of her badge seeming to grow heavier in the thick, humid air between them. Morrison shifts his weight, uncertainty evident in his stance as Agent Wilson deliberately places her FBI credentials on the dashboard next to an array of sophisticated surveillance equipment. She mentally notes his microexpressions, cataloging every reaction for her ongoing investigation of department practices, her finger hovering near a discreet panic button, though her calm expression suggests she doubts she will need it. Steam continues to rise from the vehicle's hood, creating an otherworldly atmosphere as Agent Wilson finally breaks the tension-filled silence, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of 2 decades, with the Bureau each word measured and precise as she begins to turn this routine traffic stop into something that will ripple through the entire police department, her tones suggesting that this moment has been months in the making. The emergency lights continue their hypnotic dance across the wet pavement as Agent Wilson activates additional recording protocols with subtle movements that appear natural to any observer, her training allowing her to maintain absolute control of the situation while documenting every aspect of this encounter for what she knows will become a landmark case in police reform. Her presence in Cedar Grove tonight representing merely the tip of a much larger federal investigation. A distant roll of thunder punctuates the silence as Agent Wilson observes Morrison processing the reality that his ordinary traffic stop has transformed into a career-defining moment, her sophisticated surveillance equipment capturing every nuance of his reaction, while her mental notes already begin forming the framework of a report that will eventually reach the highest levels of the Justice Department, the rain creating a barrier between them that seems to represent the division between local and federal authority. Morrison's face flushes red as he snatches her credentials, declaring them possible forgeries, his voice rising while Agent Wilson activates her FBI emergency beacon, bringing the full weight of federal attention to this rain-soaked street corner where a simple traffic stop transforms into a career-defining moment for both law enforcement officers, the tension between them crackling like the lightning overhead as years of unchecked authority collides with federal oversight. Officer Morrison's hand returns to hover near his weapon, an unconscious gesture that Agent Wilson's cameras capture in high definition as he demands additional identification, his voice carrying an edge of desperate authority that echoes off the wet pavement around them. The Mercedes' sophisticated recording equipment documenting every word, every movement, and every escalation, while Agent Wilson maintains her composed demeanor, carefully noting how his aggressive stance contradicts standard police procedure. The rain begins to intensify again as if responding to the growing hostility. Morrison's body camera light blinks steadily, though Agent Wilson's trained eye notices his subtle attempt to angle it away from their confrontation, her own systems continuing to record from multiple angles as she watches him struggle with the realization that his usual tactics have led him into dangerous territory, her finger pressing a discreet button that alerts FBI tactical units already stationed throughout Cedar Grove. Steam rises between them as Morrison demands she step out of the vehicle, his authority fracturing as Agent Wilson calmly refuses, citing federal protocols and procedures, her voice carrying the weight of countless similar investigations, while her hand remains visible on the steering wheel, demonstrating perfect procedure. Even as she mentally documents every violation of protocol Morrison commits in his increasing agitation, the surrounding darkness split by the rotating emergency lights that create shifting shadows across both their faces. Agent Wilson observes Morrison's internal struggle reflected in the rain-streaked windows, his reputation as an officer with multiple complaints, suddenly relevant as he radios for supervisor, back up, his voice carrying a tremor of uncertainty that contradicts his aggressive stance, her surveillance equipment capturing the exact timestamp of his call as evidence for the investigation she knows will follow this encounter. Her presence in Cedar Grove, carefully planned to expose patterns of behavior her team has spent months documenting. The atmospheric tension builds as Morrison paces beside the vehicle, his boots splashing through puddles that reflect the emergency lights in crimson and cobalt swirls. Agent Wilson maintains her position of calm authority, her eyes tracking his movement, while she activates additional surveillance protocols, the sophisticated equipment in her vehicle broadcasting every moment to secure FBI servers, ensuring that whatever happens next becomes part of an irrefutable record. Distant sirens pierce the night as local backup approaches, their wailing growing louder as Agent Wilson watches Morrison's increasing agitation, her trained eye noting how his hand repeatedly moves to and from his weapon while rain courses down his face, mixing with sweat. Despite the cool temperature, her own heart rate remaining steady as she mentally records each procedural violation, each aggressive movement, and each attempt to intimidate, knowing that this encounter will become a pivotal moment in her broader investigation. Lightning illuminates the scene in stark detail as Morrison makes a critical error, demanding Agent Wilson surrender her phone, which she knows contains federal credentials and clearances. Her calm refusal causing him to reach through the window, attempting to grab the device, her reactions carefully measured as she pulls back, maintaining her professional composure while multiple cameras capture his loss of control from every angle, the moment transforming into damning evidence that will soon echo through department halls. The rain hammers against the Mercedes roof, creating a thunderous backdrop as backup units approach, their lights visible in the distance. Agent Wilson, sensing the situation approaching a dangerous tipping point, as Morrison redoes dispatch with increasingly agitated, demands her finger hovering over direct lines to federal tactical support, while she maintains her outward calm, knowing that the next few moments will determine how this confrontation ends. Lightning flashes illuminate faces in windows as neighbors emerge with phones raised high, capturing Morrison's increasingly aggressive stance, while Agent Wilson maintains her calculated composure. Teenage witnesses live stream the confrontation as police backup arrives, sirens piercing the night, their presence adding fuel to an already explosive situation. The growing crowd of onlookers creating an impromptu audience to this display of law enforcement conflict. Porch lights begin flickering on one by one down Cedar Grove Road as residents, drawn by the commotion and spreading social media alerts, step out into the rain, their phones glowing like fireflies. In the darkness, Agent Wilson notices local news vans appearing at the end of the street, their satellite dishes extending skyward, while her surveillance equipment continues its silent documentation of every development, every witness, and every approaching patrol car. Mrs. Chen from the corner house clutches her tablet, broadcasting live to her neighborhood watch group, while college students from the nearby university campus gather on the sidewalk as social media feeds instantly spreading across platforms with hashtags that begin trending locally. Agent Wilson watches these developments through her rain-streaked windows, noting how Morrison seems increasingly aware of the growing audience, his body language shifting between aggression and uncertainty as cameras capture his every move. The arrival of 3 additional patrol cars bathes the scene in a carousel of red and blue, their spotlights cutting through the rain to illuminate the gathering crowd, which has swelled to nearly 50 people. Agent Wilson observes 2 local reporters pushing through the spectators, their microphones raised as they narrate the unfolding drama, while her sophisticated equipment continues recording Morrison's increasingly erratic behavior, his commands now competing with the buzz of civilian conversations and the steady drumbeat of rain. Thunder rolls overhead as prominent community leaders begin arriving, drawn by urgent texts from concerned residents. Reverend Jackson from the First Baptist Church stands beneath a black umbrella, his presence adding gravity to the situation, while City Council member Sarah Martinez goes live on Instagram, capturing Morrison's confrontational stance and Agent Wilson's professional restraint, the crowd growing more restless as they recognize the racial dynamics playing out before them. Agent Wilson maintains her position of calm authority as smartphones capture every angle of the scene, teenage YouTubers providing running commentary, while retired Judge Thompson emerges from his corner house, still in his bathrobe, his legal expertise adding weight to the murmured discussions about police conduct and federal authority, the rain continuing to fall as more emergency vehicles arrive, their lights reflecting off the wet pavement, creating an almost theatrical atmosphere. Local police officers attempting to control the growing crowd find their efforts complicated by the continuous arrival of more spectators, cars parking haphazardly along Cedar Grove Road. As word spreads through social media, Agent Wilson notes the arrival of several civil rights activists, their presence suggesting the incident has already caught the attention of community organizers, while her team monitors the rapidly spreading footage across multiple platforms. The sophisticated recording equipment in Agent Wilson's vehicle captures background conversations as neighbors share stories of previous encounters with Officer Morrison, their whispered accounts being broadcast live across various social platforms, while news helicopters appear overhead, their spotlights cutting through the rain to illuminate the scene below, creating an almost cinematic quality to the unfolding drama. Morrison's supervisor finally arrives on scene, stepping out of his vehicle into a wall of cameras and shouted questions, his face revealing concern as he assesses the situation. Agent Wilson watching through her monitors as the crowd continues to grow, their phones raised high, documentary evidence multiplying exponentially, while the rain creates a shimmering curtain of water that seems to separate the observers from the central confrontation unfolding before them. FBI headquarters buzzes with activity as analysts pore over Agent Wilson's gathered evidence, revealing Morrison's hidden pattern of targeting minority drivers. Agent Wilson discovers her traffic stop was his fourth that night, all involving minorities, all without citations, suggesting a disturbing trend that reaches beyond one officer. The investigation room glows, with dozens of monitors, each displaying different aspects of months of surveillance data that paints an increasingly troubling picture of Cedar Grove's police department. Special Agent Wilson stands before a complex digital map displaying hundreds of traffic stops spanning the past 6 months, red dots clustering in predominantly minority neighborhoods, while analysts compile body camera footage showing Morrison's escalating pattern of aggressive behavior towards specific demographics, their algorithms detecting concerning phrases and actions that previous reviews had missed or ignored, the evidence mounting with each new piece of data processed. In a secure conference room 12 floors above the city, Agent Wilson presents her findings to a panel of senior FBI officials and Justice Department representatives. Her collected evidence projected onto massive screens showing Morrison's disciplinary record, revealing multiple complaints that were suspiciously dismissed, her own footage from the confrontation playing silently in the background as she outlines the broader implications of systemic issues within the department. Forensic analysts work through the night processing data from Officer Morrison's patrol car GPS records, revealing unauthorized detours through specific neighborhoods cross-referenced with citizen complaints that were never properly filed. Agent Wilson watches as her team uncovers a network of deleted emails between department officials discussing, quote, informal policies, unquote, regarding certain communities, their decryption tools breaking through layers of attempted digital cover-ups. The investigation expands beyond Morrison as Agent Wilson's team discovers patterns in shift assignments showing certain officers consistently placed in targeted areas, the body camera footage revealing a troubling culture of unchecked behavior, the evidence room walls now covered with timeline charts connecting incidents, complaints, and departmental responses that never resulted in meaningful action. Agent Wilson reviews surveillance footage from her specially equipped Mercedes, showing Morrison's previous stops that week, her team's enhanced audio capturing conversations between officers revealing casual discussions of profiling tactics, the sophisticated FBI systems analyzing years of radio transmissions finding coded language used to identify potential targets based on demographic factors rather than suspicious behavior. In the digital forensics lab, technicians recovered deleted text messages from department issued phones, revealing discussions between Morrison and other officers about avoiding official documentation of certain stops. Agent Wilson watches as artificial intelligence algorithms identify patterns in the communication, suggesting a coordinated effort to maintain plausible deniability by continuing discriminatory practices. The scope of the investigation widens as Agent Wilson's team discovers links between traffic stop patterns and subsequent civil asset forfeitures, the data showing a disproportionate impact on minority owned businesses and properties. Financial analysts tracing funds through department accounts, revealing questionable allocations of resources and selective enforcement priorities that raised serious constitutional concerns. As midnight approaches on the seventh floor, Agent Wilson reviews thermal imaging from surveillance satellites showing Morrison's actual patrol patterns compared to his filed reports, the discrepancies building a compelling case of systematic targeting, while her team processes civilian video footage from hundreds of phones that captured similar incidents throughout the county, each piece adding weight to the federal case. The investigation command center transforms into a hub of activity as Agent Wilson coordinates with Civil Rights Division attorneys, the walls now covered with evidence boards connecting years of incidents, complaints, and cover-ups, her team working methodically to document every violation, every pattern, and every attempt to conceal departmental practices that would soon face unprecedented federal scrutiny. Tension crackles through Federal Courtroom 357 as Agent Wilson takes the stand, her testimony weaving together months of surveillance footage, citizen complaints, and statistical analysis into a devastating portrait of systemic bias, while Morrison shifts uncomfortably, his once confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of irrefutable evidence. The mahogany panels and marble columns of the historic courthouse seeming to press down upon all present as the proceedings unfold. Agent Wilson maintains steady eye contact with the jury as she methodically presents heat maps showing Morrison's patrol patterns over 6 months, the digital displays casting an ethereal glow across the hushed courtroom, while she explains how artificial intelligence analysis revealed targeting patterns that human reviewers had missed for years, the evidence highlighting clusters of stops in minority neighborhoods that could not be explained by any legitimate law enforcement strategy. The courtroom falls silent as Agent Wilson plays enhanced audio from her surveillance equipment, Morrison's voice echoing through professional speakers as he discusses tactics with fellow officers, the casual prejudice in their conversations, drawing audible gasps from the gallery while the defendant stares at the floor, his attorneys frantically scribbling notes as the defense strategy unravels beneath the weight of technological evidence that leaves no room for alternative explanations. Sunlight streams through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that dance above the evidence table as Agent Wilson presents financial records showing patterns of civil asset forfeiture, the data revealing how seized properties consistently belonged to minority business owners. Her precise testimony, supported by charts, graphs, and satellite imagery that transform complex statistics into compelling visual evidence, the jury leaning forward in their seats as the story unfolds. The prosecution displays body camera footage from dozens of traffic stops, creating a damning montage of Morrison's escalating behavior, Agent Wilson narrating each incident with professional detachment while highlighting procedural violations and constitutional concerns, her expertise as a federal agent lending weight to every word as she connects individual incidents to broader departmental patterns that could no longer be ignored or explained away. Morrison's lawyer rises for cross-examination, his confident stride betraying nervousness as Agent Wilson calmly dismantles each attempted challenge. Her responses, backed by years of meticulously gathered data, the courtroom temperature seems to rise as she produces previously sealed internal affairs reports showing how similar complaints had been systematically buried, the evidence casting shadows across Morrison's law enforcement career that would never fade. Agent Wilson activates a sophisticated digital presentation showing three-dimensional recreations of key traffic stops. The technology, allowing jurors to view incidents from multiple angles, while she explains how FBI analysts identified consistent behavioral patterns, the evidence transforming abstract statistics into vivid reality. As Morrison watches his career dissolve beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of federal justice. The gallery holds its breath as Agent Wilson reveals cell phone records showing coordination between officers to avoid documentation of certain stops, her testimony painting a picture of systematic discrimination hidden beneath a veneer of procedural propriety, the evidence sending ripples through the law enforcement community as fellow officers in attendance realize the far-reaching implications of this case. Afternoon light slants through Venetian blinds, creating prison bar shadows across Morrison's face as Agent Wilson presents her final piece of evidence, a comprehensive analysis showing how his actions fit into a broader pattern of departmental bias. Her testimony connecting individual incidents into an undeniable tapestry of discrimination that would force the entire criminal justice system to confront uncomfortable truths. The air grows thick with tension as Agent Wilson concludes her testimony, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence, her precisely presented evidence forming an insurmountable wall of truth that would transform this case from a simple traffic stop into a landmark decision with implications reaching far beyond Cedar Grove's city limits. Morrison's high-powered attorney attempts to spin a tale of reasonable suspicion and proper procedure, but Agent Wilson produces a shocking piece of evidence. Her FBI vehicle had been recording Morrison's own racist comments through his open mic during similar stops in the past month, leaving his defense team scrambling to salvage their case, the tension in the courtroom becoming almost unbearable as the damning recordings echo through the chambers. Defense attorney Richard Sterling, renowned for winning impossible cases, rises from his leather chair, his $1,000 suit failing to mask the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead as he attempts to discredit Agent Wilson's testimony, his usual commanding presence diminishing as she produces a series of time-stamped recordings that perfectly align with her Mercedes surveillance footage, the evidence creating an airtight timeline of discriminatory behavior that no amount of legal maneuvering could explain away. The gallery watches in stunned silence as Sterling attempts to argue that Morrison's actions followed department protocol. Agent Wilson responding by revealing internal memorandums showing how official policies were selectively enforced. Her evidence, including Morrison's own dashboard camera footage capturing conversations with other officers about targeting specific neighborhoods, the defense team's expensive strategy crumbling as their client's true patterns emerge in high-definition detail. Sterling desperately attempts to shift focus to Agent Wilson's undercover operation, questioning its legitimacy, while she calmly produces federal warrants and authorization documents, her preparation leaving no legal stone unturned as Morrison slumps further in his chair, the weight of his documented behavior pressing down on him, while his attorney's arguments grow increasingly desperate and disconnected from the mounting evidence. The prosecution team sits quietly, allowing Sterling to entangle himself in contradictions as he tries to explain away the pattern of stops. Agent Wilson's data showing that Morrison pulled over minority drivers at 8 times the rate of his colleagues, the statistical evidence supported by cellular tracking data that revealed his deliberate deviations from assigned patrol routes to target specific communities. Afternoon shadows lengthen across the courtroom as Sterling calls into question the reliability of surveillance technology, Agent Wilson responding by playing enhanced audio from Morrison's own body camera, the crystal-clear recordings capturing derogatory comments made moments before initiating traffic stops, the defense attorney's objections dying in his throat as his client's voice fills the courthouse with undeniable proof of bias. The judge leans forward with increasing interest as Agent Wilson presents a detailed analysis of Morrison's radio communications, revealing coded language used to alert other officers about potential targets, the evidence suggesting a widespread understanding of discriminatory practices that extended beyond one officer's actions. Sterling's attempts to isolate his client's behavior undermined by proof of systematic coordination. Sterling's voice wavers as he attempts his final strategy, suggesting that Agent Wilson's investigation showed selective bias itself, her response coming in the form of comprehensive data showing that her team had reviewed stops involving drivers of all backgrounds, the evidence revealing Morrison's clear pattern of discrimination that could not be explained by any legitimate law enforcement purpose. The defense team shuffles through papers seeking any argument that might salvage their rapidly deteriorating case, while Agent Wilson produces satellite imagery showing Morrison's actual patrol patterns compared to his filed reports, the technological evidence creating an insurmountable wall of truth that leaves Sterling standing speechless before the jury, his legal expertise rendered useless against irrefutable facts. As the day draws to a close, Sterling's carefully constructed defense lies in ruins around him. Agent Wilson's methodical presentation of evidence, having systematically dismantled every possible explanation for his client's behavior, the courtroom atmosphere heavy with the recognition that they were witnessing not just the end of one officer's career, but the beginning of a fundamental shift in law enforcement accountability. Judge Gloria Martinez leans forward, delivering a landmark verdict that sends shockwaves through law enforcement nationwide, ordering not just Morrison's termination, but implementing sweeping reforms, including civilian oversight boards, mandatory bias training, and community policing programs, as Agent Wilson stands silently, her 6-month undercover operation transforming into a catalyst for lasting change, the packed courtroom holding its collective breath as justice unfolds in historic fashion. The judge's voice carries unwavering authority as she outlines Morrison's violations, her words echoing through the chamber while cameras broadcast the proceedings to millions across the country. Agent Wilson's evidence, having painted an undeniable picture of systematic discrimination that demanded more than just individual punishment, the verdict reaching beyond one officer to address deeply rooted institutional problems that could no longer be ignored. Martinez announces unprecedented financial penalties against the department, requiring the creation of an independent review board staffed by community leaders and civil rights attorneys, their authority extending to all future disciplinary actions, while Morrison sits motionless, his career and reputation permanently shattered by the weight of evidence that Agent Wilson's operation had methodically gathered over months of patient surveillance. The gallery erupts in murmured discussions as Judge Martinez mandates department-wide retraining focusing on implicit bias, cultural sensitivity, and constitutional rights, her order requiring monthly progress reports and federal oversight until measurable improvements could be documented. Agent Wilson's laptop silently recording every word as the case transforms from individual prosecution to systemic reform. Sunlight streams through courthouse windows, illuminating the judge's face as she implements mandatory body camera protocols with civilian review capabilities, her verdict creating new standards for transparency and accountability, while Morrison's former colleagues watch from the gallery, their own practices suddenly subject to unprecedented scrutiny under the new guidelines that would reshape law enforcement culture. Agent Wilson maintains her professional composure as Judge Martinez orders the creation of community outreach programs designed to rebuild trust between law enforcement and minority neighborhoods, the verdict allocating substantial resources to initiatives that would transform police training, recruitment, and operational procedures, the courtroom atmosphere electric with the recognition of historic change. The judge's voice grows stern as she addresses department leadership, announcing federal monitoring of all traffic stop data with quarterly reviews and public reporting requirements, her decision incorporating cutting-edge analytics to identify potential bias patterns before they become systemic problems. Agent Wilson's innovative surveillance techniques becoming the blueprint for future oversight operations nationwide. Morrison stares at the floor as Martinez outlines his personal penalties, including substantial fines, mandatory community service, and lifetime ban from law enforcement work, her verdict serving as a powerful warning to others, while establishing precedents that would influence police reform cases across the country. the weight of Agent Wilson's evidence, ensuring appeals would prove futile. The afternoon light casts long shadows through the courtroom as Judge Martinez concludes her verdict, announcing the establishment of a victim compensation fund and requiring the department to acknowledge past wrongs through formal apologies and concrete actions, her decision marking the beginning of a new era in law enforcement accountability, while Agent Wilson's careful documentation ensures every aspect of the ruling stands on solid legal ground. Television cameras capture the historic moment as Martinez signs the final order, her verdict transforming a single traffic stop into a watershed moment for civil rights, while Agent Wilson gathers her materials, knowing her next assignment will build upon this success to create lasting change in other departments across the nation, the case closing but its impact rippling outward to reshape the future of American law enforcement.